right. So, hello and welcome everyone today. So, we're going to be talking about how to release emotions that get stuck in the body using EFT or tapping and yoga. So, if you're wondering if emotions can get trapped in your body and how to release them, we're going to talk about that. Releasing emotions like anger, shame, frustration that are keeping you stuck and not being able to move forward. Or maybe you struggle with something like emotional eating or sugar cravings or binge eating, and you want to know how to break that cycle from that emotion base. So, if you guys don't know me, my name is Michele. I have my doctorate in physical therapy, and I do online personal training, health coaching, and teach yoga for women, especially with moms. So today I have my friend Maria here, who is an expert in EFT and tapping. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Hi, and thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to share with everyone today. So, yeah, as Michele said, I'm an EFT coach, and I also focus on working with moms. I primarily work with moms who are trying to heal their postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety without the use of medication. And I've helped moms with many different things with postpartum depression and anxiety, also traumatic birth stories. I mean, a lot of the times we don't realize how the emotions affect us and how they can come out. And in reality, we can heal all of it as long as we kind of pay attention to what is happening.
Yeah, and I love how you just sort of brought up trauma a little bit, because I think we can experience so many things and that sort of seems small, so we don't even count it as trauma. I've had 4 kids, and it's like, I mean, each birth, I mean, it's a lot to take in and experience, and a lot of stuff out of your control. So especially if you have had a harder one. So
Yeah,
first,
absolutely.
yeah. So first we're going to talk about how emotions get trapped in the body. So our brain sort of gets in the way and tells us not to experience something. So maybe think that you're at a grocery store and you're getting frustrated or angry because they don't have things on the shelf or things are out of stock, but you don't want to yell out and act crazy at the store. So you sort of keep those emotions in. So you can imagine maybe your boss yells at you and then you feel shame or embarrassed, but you sort of keep it together. So those feelings get stuck in us and sort of stay with us, and they get trapped in our body, and we avoid them, we move on, we don't think about them, and we repress those emotions. They're still there affecting us. So could you add to that a little bit, Maria?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you said is right. That's exactly kind of what we know from research about how if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, it's a great one. It really explains a lot about trauma and how trauma gets stored in our bodies. And it really is that, our nervous system registers every single thing that happens to us. And it does sort of put it on that back burner. So just because you're not actively realizing that you're having this emotion doesn't mean you're not having it or that your body didn't register it. And the thing is, our body is very good at storing all of these things and not, letting us know right away. And it sort of like builds up, builds up, builds up until the top comes off. And that is usually when you get, chronic illnesses, persistent aches and pains in specific parts of the body, because we kind of know that there's certain parts of the body that correlate with certain emotions. So like if your lower back is hurting, that might be a different emotion than if, let's say, your throat is hurting or your shoulders are hurting. And that is how our body is storing it. Our nervous system is storing it, holding on to it. And then it's almost like, you put some poison into the well and it just seeps into your water unknowingly. It could be there forever until you start having some really serious issues and your body's kind of like, pay attention to me, please. You got to resolve this.
Yeah, I love that. And it made me think of, sometimes I will tense my shoulders, but so maybe I'll go through something and I don't realize it till it's all done. Right? People say, like, with food, like you're so busy, you don't even realize you're hungry. And then later you feel starving. So a lot of times we're like just so busy and so out of touch that we're not noticing what is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. With our busy lives nowadays, we're actually taught to ignore our feelings, right? Like if you think about it with, sleep training, like the more traditional sleep training, we're sort of told to ignore our baby's cues for sleeping, for eating, doing eating on a schedule too. Like it doesn't actually work with our body. We're not then looking at what our signs are. And so when we continually ignore those signs, then that becomes our go-to. And yeah, we constantly just keep ignoring. We could push through pretty much anything.
Yeah, yes, we can. So now we're going to talk a little bit so we're a little bit aware of how these emotions can get stuck in our body, but how do we release them? So I thought this was really interesting. So when we experience something and we sort of get that adrenaline increase, when we shake or cry or laugh or we're doing something physical, it helps to burn off that adrenaline and gets us back to our calming nervous system. And a lot of times our body can start to process some emotions by physically moving or physical activity, because it can sort of help to reset the nervous system. And it allows that nervous system to go through the stress cycle. So it's really interesting to me. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, how people are actually able to release emotions through some type of movement?
Yeah, since I primarily focus on the EFT, so our movement is tapping, and
Mhm.
you're tapping on just a few points on your body. It's mostly around the head, and then we also bring in some hand points as well. And those points are on your autonomic nervous system. And then if you think about it also in Eastern medicine, our autonomic nervous system is the same as meridians. So if you ever gone to acupuncture and heard somebody talk about meridians, meridians are our autonomic nervous system. Like all our parts are connected through the whole body, through our nervous system. And so when we are dysregulated, or like we're either in fight or flight, or we're in constant freeze, those emotions are there in the nervous system, and it almost like blocks our nervous system from working properly. Like imagine you have like a stream and you put a boulder in it. That's what happens. And you can either have one big boulder, which is like a big trauma event, or you can have lots of little ones that will build up a wall eventually, right? And so what you do with things like movement, with things like EFT, which is, you're tapping, you're stimulating your nervous system, is you're shaking those boulders out of your nervous system. You're allowing them to come out wherever you're experiencing the stored trauma. Like, as I said before, different body parts clue us in as to what might be the problem, right? For example, like, when our stomach is hurting, we know that we associate that with anxiety a lot. It usually is some sort of a fear or a worry. Our heart and our chest area, that could be like we experience some real emotional hurt. If it's, we're experiencing something in our throat, that could be about us not being able to speak our truth. So essentially, you can imagine like your truth has been shoved down your throat the
Mm.
whole entire life. And so your throat essentially gets congested. All those messages you wanted to bring up. And so when we do movement, when we do things like tapping, we do things like yoga, we are able to move and shake those boulders out of where they're stuck in the nervous system. And then they move along and we can restore our nervous system functioning.
Yeah, I love that. And so I personally have done EFT before, and I started doing it when there was something in my family that was really stressful and it was sort of ongoing. So I found it and used it for myself. And recently, just this week, I did a session with Maria, and it was great because it's like combines that EFT I was sort of doing on my own, but sort of like with her wisdom, as she like could incorporate things I was saying and how I was feeling, because I have always been an emotion repressor. So I've been on a journey to work through that, and I'm still on that journey. So the EFT and the tapping, I have found personally really helpful, and it's a really simple thing to do. And it's a good way to, especially if you're someone who struggles with feelings or emotions, to be able to just allow yourself to sort of talk through those and express those and start to get them out. But you have that physical movement, actually tapping on spots as you're doing it. And it's so key, even like in marriage, I've heard like walk with your spouse when you're having an argument. Like movement is so key to so many aspects, but we tend to be sedentary. And it sort of leaves you stuck for lots of different things.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, yeah, our life now is very sedentary with our work, with the way how our kids are at school. We don't incorporate enough movement. And yeah, even more stuff gets stuck in our body. That's, some of it is purely physical. We do need to move around. There's lots of research supporting movement, especially rhythmic movement, things like yoga, dance, all of that really helps with releasing these emotions that we have stored up, because then our body is moving and grooving and shaking and activating, right? And then we can't keep repressing it. And we
Yeah.
don't want to keep repressing it, because it does eventually, like the metaphor I used, and that's how I picture it, is we have put poison in the well, or somebody else put poison in their well, and it just seeps into all the water we drink. And we want to remove that poison out to be able to drink clean water.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we can all sort of relate to like when we're moving, feeling better, and there's just a lot of things going on there. And I think we can also relate to when we've had something happen, we notice that we hold on to it cognitively, like we're not really able to repress it. So it's that same thing that we might notice it's there, but we don't connect that we can move or do these different things or work through it to get rid of it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So a little bit about yoga and releasing emotions. So I was doing just a little research, and yoga has actually been shown as an effective treatment for PTSD and
Mhm.
also more effective than some medications. And also the same thing with exercise for treating mild to moderate depression or anxiety has been shown more effective. And I think it's just so powerful, especially when we are in a pill for an ill type of country, that there's these natural lifestyle things that we can do. And we just need a little more education and encouragement on. And sometimes you got to stick with it or adjust it so you can make it work for you. So, also, as someone is doing yoga, you might start to notice that maybe as you come into a twist or a certain pose, that maybe you want to cry. And that's just you're finding a spot and your body is releasing that emotion. And that is totally okay. You just have to let that emotion come up, cry, especially if you're at home. It doesn't matter if you're in a class, like most yoga teachers will know, that's okay. And you don't necessarily have to analyze it or cognitively think about it, but just sort of let it be. So, yeah. And so, Maria, so as people are starting to notice this, what are some simple first steps they can do to start to release emotions, or maybe to start decrease stress, because their stress might be related to emotions? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first step is, as you were saying, noticing it. So I always recommend for people to journal, especially if they are like you, Michelle, repressors, right? So they
Yeah.
probably never paid attention because they spend their whole life pushing those away. So I would like for my clients, when I start working with them, I encourage them to journal and to see where are they feeling it in their body, because
Mhm.
there are certain points where we all kind of feel our stress or specific emotions. So first I want people to notice, journal it so they know themselves where is it coming up. Second, absolutely, pay attention to your nutrition, pay attention to how much time you're spending outside, move your body a bit, right? I have some free resources on my webpage with like some sample EFT tapping that you can do to learn. And then the good part is, once you learn EFT tapping, for the everyday stressors, you can do it yourself at home. It's very simple. I do it myself daily, multiple times a day. I do some small, like 5-minute sessions where it's sort of, sometimes I do like a boost, and sometimes maybe, something upsetting happened and I need to regulate myself. And for me, EFT is what regulates me. Another thing that I pass on to my clients a lot is breathing exercising and grounding exercises. My son right now is a big fan of finger breathing. If you've never heard of finger breathing, it's super simple. You breathe in until you reach the tip of
Okay.
your finger, and breathe out when you get into here. And you just go along like this, and you just breathe. And you can calm yourself down. That really helps that stress, like that
Mhm.
adrenaline rush. You are able to cool it down and sort of bring yourself to center. So when you can actually access your cognitive functions, because now your amygdala has been calm down, it's not setting out danger signs, and you can think and be like, well, what is
Yeah.
happening? So those are very simple things that you can do. It doesn't take very much time. Just remember to incorporate them throughout the day.
Yeah, I love that because I think breathing, I'm a big fan of deep breathing,
Mm.
but I mean, it just sort of brings that thinking brain back on. I always use this analogy for my kids, like that they flip their lid and they no longer
Mhm.
have this thinking part of their brain. And it happens to us as adults. So deep breathing is a quick way to get that. And yeah, like you said, I personally like journaling, especially when I feel stuck with something or if it has to do with feelings, like allowing myself to write it out and focus more on my feelings as I'm journaling helps too. And just like you were saying, having these short breaks throughout your day to help regulate your nervous system, because different things are going to come up, but having short, quick ways to get back down, it's doing EFT, doing deep breathing, maybe even doing like a quick yoga, a quick stretch, a walk outside. I mean, being outside is huge for calming. And that, also keep in mind that we can change our brain. So the way we're reacting, our normal patterns, we can change our brain as we start to do some of these different activities. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it. Like I can even personally attest that the regulation piece and sort of, helping your brain become more on track with doing things like mindfulness exercises. And I to me yoga is a big mindfulness exercise. I'm not
Mhm.
one to sit and meditate quietly. I can't do that, so I've always done like little short bursts. And doing EFT, I now realize that with mindfulness, with EFT, what I have is I have that split second before my amygdala kicks into, danger, danger, is it fight or flight or is it freeze, so I can have access my thinking brain and realize, what do I need to do? Do I need to leave the situation to help myself regulate, or can I take a few deep breaths right now and I can re-regulate, which is something before I was doing those exercises that wasn't available to me or to my body at all.
Yeah, I think there's all these different tools. So having more of these tools in
Hmm.
our toolbox is helpful. Because I'm obviously still newer to EFT, but for me, like that really helps when like something comes up that like I don't know what's wrong and I'm able to tap those points and talk it through. Like a few months ago, there was like a triggering event and I was like gonna do yoga. I'm like, I can't even do yoga right now. Like I had to sort of tap it out and talk myself and like put the pieces together and then I could move on. So having these different tools, so as different situations pop up in your life, you can start to move through those better.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. And so again, um, yeah, I did a session with Maria and it was really great. And I don't know if everybody's a little bit different, but it almost combines a little bit of like coaching or counseling with the tapping and really um it felt really validating because I have done it before on my own, but really having someone piece these different pieces together for me was really huge. So yeah, so if you guys want to get in contact with her, we'll put her information below and we'll also put her sample EFT freebie so that you can try it yourself. Because again, it's a tool you can do all by yourself. It's also a tool that you can use Maria to work with and really help to individualize it. I know I had tried like a couple of videos, where people are talking through, and I personally didn't like those as much. I'd like to be able to do it by myself or have someone where it was personalized to me. But that is another option. But I think having it personalized to you sort of gets to the root of what EFT is supposed to do instead of having like this generalized video that you're following. Um, so yeah, so we'll put links down below to how to connect with us. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, just thank you. I was so glad that, you felt good after the session. And
Yeah.
it is the way I do it is because I have a counseling background. I do bring in some like coaching into my EFT as well because I do like to piece it together.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. I think if you're doing it for just sort of general stress relief, you can absolutely follow videos and do it yourself and it could be very good. But when you're doing a deep dive into yourself, it is invaluable to having another person there, because the thing is, when we're in our lives and we see our life, and we sort of miss the forest for the trees because we're
Yeah.
in it. we can't see all the details, but then, or rather we see all the details, but we don't see how they combine into a picture. But then when you bring somebody else in, they see the full picture and you're kind of like, oh, I didn't realize my picture looked like that. And I think we all have experiences like that, because when I was doing EFT sessions with some of the other students, they also have brought in some insight to me where I was like, oh, wow, I never looked at the situation like this. And I think that's the power of working together with people in general. You get insight and you get something that you can't by yourself.
Yeah. And I think, as I would tell her stuff and then we would tap through it. And I mean, I had already told her this stuff, so I was already aware of it, but then connecting it in ways that like, whoa, like I didn't think of that way is so powerful. Yeah. So I think getting help and working with someone else can be really powerful for a lot of areas of life whenever we're feeling stuck. So
Yeah, and I think that's the testament to the fact that how bringing the body into it is so important, because like we have a lot of talk therapy, right, and all the cognitive therapies and everything, and they do work to an extent, but when the problem is really lying in our nervous system reacting a particular way, we can't talk our way out of it, because our nervous system doesn't respond to logic, our amygdala doesn't respond to logic. Those are primitive systems meant to keep us
mhm.
alive, and they do not respond to logic. But when you're activating them while you're saying this, you're almost putting two different brains, you're upstairs and you're downstairs together online communicating. And that's why you're getting a lot more of these insights, and your body finally registers it, because they're finally talking, whereas before they couldn't, because they're not meant to.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so thanks for sharing. We'll have links down below to connect with us. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Maria. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.